going to have a good time together. Now, I want to tell all of you before we get into this, some of this material is not easy stuff to teach. And because it's not easy to teach, some of it is not easy to hear. So I'm going to do my best. So we're going to accomplish a couple of things. The first thing we're going to accomplish is we're going to tell you one of the greatest challenges that we face, as I'm going to introduce the book in just a second. One of the greatest challenges we face in anything we do, whether it's business or ministry, most people just simply sometimes limp along and kind of discover things by accident. And then as they discover things by accident, then there's a level of success or in some cases failure that comes with what they discover by accident. Here's why. Because nobody is really telling us sometimes, I'm talking now in the context of business, and I'm talking secondly in the context of nonprofits, and thirdly, I'm talking in the context of churches or church ministries. Nobody tells us how to do it. They tell you what you should do to be a leader. They tell you what you should do over here, but nobody's actually breaking it down into what I call bite-sized pieces so you understand how to do it. One of the greatest illustrations, I think, at least for me, that helps me, I'll pray in Jesus' name that it'll help you, but one of the greatest illustrations that I think help us to begin to build a context or a framework for some of the stuff we're talking about is if you go up to somebody and somebody walks up to an elephant and they touch the elephant on the trunk, and you were to ask that person, well, what is an elephant? That person would tell you, that because they touched the trunk, they would say that elephant is like a hose. You go up to somebody else, they walk up to the elephant and they touch it on the side, the big side of the elephant, and you say, what is an elephant? And they say, oh, it's like a wall. Somebody else walks around the side of the elephant, grabs it by the tail, and you ask them, what is an elephant? And they tell you, oh, it's like a rope. The truth is, when we talk about building the world outreach and building our schools and our world outreach offices, or we're talking about businesses, or we're talking about nonprofits, whatever we're talking about, many people only touch the trunk, or they only touch the side, or they only touch the tail. So when you try to get an explanation from them, they give you the explanation from one of those points of view instead of really it's an elephant and all three of those things are combined in it. So what you're going to find when we teach this material, because we have 8 hours of it, you're going to find there are some things that you gravitate to more easily than others, either because of your personality or your gifting. In other words, there's things that you connect to more quickly or because of just the knowledge you already have. What I want to encourage you to do, if something is taught that you don't get, doesn't feel comfortable, you're like, man, that's so far beyond me, those are the areas you need to press in a little more on. And you need to say, okay, there's some stuff here. Billy says I need to know them. The key is I don't know it, so I'm going to press in. So you're going to find some things that fit with your personality. We all do. It's like, I've been around Andrew a lot in the last year and a half, and, he'll pull out that Bible out of the back pocket, and he'll say to me, Billy, the only thing I know is what's in this book. That's what he'll tell me. But then when we get in meetings where we're really breaking down legal stuff, business stuff, financial stuff, you'd be surprised what he knows. You would. Surprise me. He's caught me off guard a couple times. So I know if I'm meeting with Andrew, I always got to bring my A game. Y'all can laugh. It's okay. It's a joke. So today I want you to look at the book. If you'll pick up, we call this the Organizational Mastery Manual. And I want to say thank you to Mark and to Mike and Carrie for allowing me to be a part of World Outreach. I also want to say thank you in that to Gary Lukey as well for allowing me to be a part of World Outreach. It's been a fun ride the last year and a half. We've learned a lot of stuff. Mike and Carrie, before I read what I want to out of the book, Mike and Carrie said to me, Mark, Mike and Carrie, and I think Tanera was there at that one, the very first meeting, and they asked, well, Billy, how long do you think this is going to take, learning how to do this? And I didn't hesitate. I don't think I did. I said, Well, it'll be 3 years before we really get it implemented at a level, and I could see on their faces all the joy of the Lord left the room. And here we are, right? 18 months later. So I want you to take the manual, if you would. The front of it is called Organizational Mastery. It's the title of it. And then let's just look at the title of contents for a moment, just to kind of help you be oriented. Now, I want to say this, if you have, because I think this is the first day you've seen the manual, right? So first of all, we have a table of contents, and the chapters, chapter number 1 is the leader manager. Chapter 2 is identifying, standardizing, and directing work. Chapter 3 is systems. Chapter 4 is charting your organization. Chapter 5 is policy and procedure. Chapter 6 is problem solving. Chapter 7 is planning. Chapter 8 is delegation. And delegation we're going to cover a little bit today, and then we're going to cover the rest of it tomorrow. And then chapter 9 is project management, and chapter 10 is identifying and developing leaders. Now, chapter 10, I have to give you a warning. You know how it comes on movie ratings. You know, there's some movie ratings that are G, there's some that are PG, there's some that are R. Well, this one is XXX. Because there may be some things in there that make some people uncomfortable a little bit, in the sense of really teaching you how to be a leader. So I'm kind of sharing out of what I have learned over the years. So, but you don't have to worry about that. Probably I'm either going to do chapter 10 in the last session today or the last session tomorrow. It just depends on how we all kind of work this together. So these are the chapters. Now, here's what I want you to see. There's page numbers in the book. So when I put the slides up in just a moment, you're going to see the slides actually have the page numbers on them so that you can actually turn to the page and follow it. Did we do that? We have page numbers, right? Thank you, Tanera. Wonderful. So the page numbers are on there. This is kind of a joke, a little bit of a joke, is that I had one of my assistants. Where's Fern at? Fern's not, no. So Fern, who currently works for me, not much longer, because she's going to be because it's a joke. It's a joke because she's going to be a great CARES director. But I had them print this. You have to know this. I had them print this for me, Sandra. I had them print it for me 3 different times. And on the 3rd time, they got it right. Okay? No, true. This really happened. So I go to Russia with Mike and Carrie, and Volody, he's saying to me, can I have that? Please, can I have that? It was my only copy that had chapters and page numbers. So I gave it to him, right? I said, I can get another one printed, no problem. So I had one of our other assistants, not Fern, so she's not on the hook here, but I had another one go out and have it reprinted for me. I opened it up when I get back, and there's no page numbers. So I had to go through and handwrite every page number personally. And I'm not feeling no love in here, no support. So these are the chapters, and so the title of what we're going to talk about, of course, is Organizational Mastery. We're going to go to chapter 1, page 1, has a horse on it, you can see it. And so there's also a notes section here on the side where you can actually write notes as we go through there. So I'm going to do my best. I will give you some slides, probably not in this hour, but in the 2nd or 3rd hour, not many, but a few that intentionally do not have page numbers on them. They intentionally do not, because I want you to focus up here for a minute and let me kind of help you. But everything else you'll see will basically have the page numbers on there. So we're going to talk about, to begin with, on page number 1, the leader manager. So when we talk about an organization which World Outreach, right? So the CARES schools, the CARES Bible colleges that are all over the world, here in the U.S. and around the world, that is an organization. When we think in terms of Andrew Womack Ministries is an organization. So any kind of entity that's out there, whether it's a Charis Bible College, whether it's an Andrew Womack office somewhere in the world, whether it's your business, whether it's your nonprofit or a church, where in every situation we're talking about an organization. Now, in that context, then there are two things, there's two requirements in an organization that people need. And you can see this is on page 1. The slide tells you right there, page 1. Number one, that people need to be led. And I want to emphasize this with you, hopefully throughout the different 8 hours we have, that people do not follow leadership automatically, and people don't follow leadership just because you show up. They need to be led, and there's some very specific strategies and, very frankly, tactics, and I say that in a good scriptural honoring way because Jesus taught us those. We're going to cover a few of those. Tactics you can use to help people that need to be led. And let me just say this. I'll say this a couple of times throughout here. Remember this, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And I'll tell you that, I'll give that to you later in another chapter. But the reason I say that is because leading people is critically important, and you can't do that if you don't love or care about people. The second thing that I find missing is that systems need to be present. And we share that with you because in most nonprofits, churches, and small businesses, systems are absent. So I want you to hear me one more time. In most small businesses, in most churches, in most nonprofits, and up until recently, in a portion of World Outreach, systems have been missing. And what most people do is most people replace, they think they can substitute leadership for systems. You can't do it. Part of your leadership, whatever role you find yourself in, part of your leadership is actually either creating systems that don't exist or implementing systems that you borrowed from somewhere else that will work where you are, but you can't be systems vacuum, or you can't be systems absent so that there's a vacuum in systems. Now, we're going to talk about what they are here this morning as we go through it, but the reason that's important, I'll give you an example that when we think about it, whenever I came to Charis, let's talk about a system. And it continues to improve. I don't have my badge on, but if I had my badge on, it's got my picture on it. And on my badge, there's certain things there's certain doors here in AWM that I can get in, right? Because there is a security system. And the reason that system needs to be put in place is because AWM and Charis both have grown. And because there's many more people now involved than it was in the early days, you can't just recognize everybody that's coming in. And I see one of the greatest mistakes that leaders make is they say, well, I don't like to do systems. It seems like it's so artificial or it's not personal enough. But what you don't understand is for anything to grow, it takes a system. If you think of a baby, when a baby's born, a healthy baby is born with all the systems, right? It's got a respirator system. We're going to show you a slide in a second. It's got all the systems that it needs, right? It's got a digestive system. It's got a blood system, right? It's got a brain, it's got a mental system, emotional system. So a human is born with those things, yet somehow we think we can walk into any situation and build it. And I used to hear this all the time from leaders, and it was a huge mistake. They would go read a John Maxwell book or some book similar to that. They'd go read it. Now they're ready to go back, and I'm going to go lead, and they're trying to lead in a vacuum. There's no systems present. There's nothing to lead. It's like saying I'm going to go drive a car and there's no car in the parking lot. Maybe you're a well-capable driver, but the car doesn't exist. So the point we're making on the slide that we're on page 1 is this, is systems need to be present, but they are absent in most small businesses, nonprofits, and churches, and in some cases, As we've discovered, they may be absent in some of our CARES locations around the world. And so we need to make sure that we have systems. Now, for any organization to move forward, it needs two things. It needs leadership and it needs management. Page 3, it needs leadership and it needs management. Now, the reason that we share that with you, once again, is because in many cases, some people try to bring one or the other, or they try to bring none. So I'll show you what I mean. There's three kinds of people that are typically positioned in an organization, and you can look on page 4 for the doer piece, but there's usually the leader, the manager, and the doer. And what I find is most of the time, the best small businesses, by small business now, we're not talking 0 to 500 employees in the classical, smaller 1,000 in the classical sense. We're talking now someone, let's say, with 50 or less employees, in most cases 10 or less. That's where most small businesses reside. And in most small businesses, the reason they stay small is because the person leading the small business is a doer, not a leader or a manager. So a doer actually likes to do the work. I'm a plumber. I'm going to go plumb. That's a doer. And I have located people, even here in the ministry, that like to be doers. So let me say this and see if I can get your attention a little better. If you have a call of ministry on your life, of any kind, for any reason, there's a specific call of teaching or preaching the word in some manner or fashion, I want to give you a nugget that's worth the price of the ticket of how much you paid to get in here today. How much did they pay to come? It's free. I don't ever speak anywhere where it's free. Matter of fact, I'm going to take up an offering right now. Free? Woo! I'm going to get my tennis shoes on because we're going to run. But this is worth the price of the ticket. We're going to have to up the price, I can tell you. So here's a nugget worth the price of the ticket. The nugget that's worth the price of the ticket, if you have a calling on your life, right, for some type of ministry expression, I want to tell you this. You do not get paid to preach. Now, I know Andrew's an exception in general because of how God's used him. But by far, 99.9% of the people, you don't get paid to preach, you get paid to lead. So whether you're in whatever kind of organization you're in. And one reason why I want to emphasize that to you is because here at Charis, rightly so, there is a great emphasis on teaching and preaching. And frankly, I love to teach and preach, just so we're clear. So I'm not despising in any way. But I have friends who are some of the greatest orators and what I call revelators in the world. They can get up and break down a passage of Scripture. And I don't mean from the old denominational Baptist style. I mean from the charismatic, Holy Ghost, full of the Word style. They can get up and break out a Scripture or a passage in ways that, I just sit there in awe. Yet they've got 50 people coming to their church, and I'm not criticizing that. I'm saying because I know, because they call me for money. Kind of in subtle ways. I need to raise $50,000. Would you pray with me about it? Right? At least y'all laugh. That's pretty good. So the point is that you don't get paid to be a doer. So I want you to understand that in any organization, there are three kinds of people primarily. There are leaders, there are managers, there are doers. And if you find yourself camped out in the doer spot, I'm going to show this to you. If you find yourself over there, then probably you're not going to be in a position to be able to lead much. So the leader, you can see on the slide. Now, by the way, you notice there is no page number on this slide. This is just an extra here. The leader focuses on people. You see that? The manager focuses on systems and processes, and the doer focuses on tinkering. They tinker. Huh? Because there's certain things like in business, when I'd run business and building my real estate businesses, there were certain things I loved about real estate. There were certain kinds of things. I loved to buy property. So I remember I had some months when I was doing maybe 30 properties a month. My God, I'm acquiring, I'm buying, and you get up past, you get up on a pretty good mark, you get up pretty high, and all of a sudden you realize, you know what, somebody is going to have to look after those properties. Now, that's many years ago and much water under the bridge, but I remember the discovery process I went to because there were certain things that I gravitated to. So if you're going to be a Charis extension school or you're going to run an AWM office somewhere in the world, the challenge is you've got to be willing to wear two hats. And the two hats that you have to wear is the leader manager. And so, in fact, in the E-Myth Revisited, which is in here in the book I reference in this chapter, Michael Gerber says that entrepreneurs, he instead of calling them leader managers, he calls the leader the entrepreneur. Now, I want to say this before I ever read Michael Gerber's book, which we use as a textbook in the business school. Before I ever read Michael Gerber's book, the chapter that you have here on leader manager had already been written before I ever read it. What was interesting was he verified in his book something that over the years I already discovered through the process of elimination, and that is this: you have to be willing to wear two hats. Now let me say something here, and I want to revisit this a couple of times. Here is the challenge I have seen. I have seen people who have been very successful in corporations. When I say successful, $250,000 a year would be kind of a benchmark they would be making in the corporate world. And they leave their high-paying corporate job and they come into a small church to pastor it. And they're good speakers and they're pretty good leaders. Most of the time, they kind of know I got to get along with people, I got to love people, so they kind of have that, yet you come back and see them, and nothing about their ministry, nothing about what they're doing has grown or increased, yet they were in this high-paying corporate position. And when I was younger, I used to go, remember I'm 39, and when I was younger, I used to go, what's the deal? Well, here's what I didn't realize. What I didn't realize was the corporation where they were paid $250,000 a year already had all of the systems and processes in place. So they just simply had to lead the people inside of the system that was already provided. You take military people, and I love the military and our soldiers, but you take military people, there's not better systems in any corporation in the world than what's in the military. They got a manual for everything. Is that true? I mean, that's true, isn't it? They have a manual for everything. They've identified every system and process. But you take a military person, put them in a small business, put them in a church, put them in a Charis extension, and the manual's not provided. So there has to be both. There has to be leadership and there has to be management. And so right now, in the first part of these 8 hours we have together, or 50-minute sessions we have, in those, I want you to understand that in some cases, the systems here at Charis will be provided. I would say in a year or so, we're going to have most of it's getting ironed out right now, and you won't have to be as much of a systems person as you will as a leader. But if you're building anything and what you're building, systems are absent, it will not grow. There's no digestive system. There's no respiratory system. There's no skeletal system to hold it up. It will not grow. So you have to then go borrow the systems or come hear this teaching. So you have to be willing to wear two hats. You have to wear one called leader and one called manager. And so in that process, sometimes, depending on where you are, there's more of an emphasis on being a manager, and sometimes there's more of an emphasis on being a leader, depending on whether or not systems are present or absent. Everybody still love me? Now, we talked about the fact you have to love me to get to heaven. The Bible's very clear on that. The 20 business school students know that. We had them sign a pledge at the beginning of the year. They had to love Billy to get to heaven. Now, these two hats, page 5, the manager. A manager is a person who concentrates more on work than on people and who operates within established patterns and practices. On page 5. So it's a person who concentrates more on work. So everyone just kind of say that with me out loud, work. So in other words, he's concentrating, that person, he or she, is concentrating on the actual functions that are needed inside of whatever organization that you happen to be running or leading. And can I say this? There are some functions that are common to any organization. You take finance, for example. Come on, business school students, help me real quick on this one. You don't have a business model if you don't have what? Revenue streams. You do not have a business model if you do not have revenue streams. So if we do the business model canvas either today, which I think is scheduled, or we do it later in the week, however, whatever we do, one of the things that we emphasize is the importance of having revenue streams. Now, you don't think I'm on point, maybe, but I am. Because for the Charis Extension Schools to be properly innovated, in fact, let me say it to you this way, and I'm not going to charge you anything for this one. You cannot innovate anything in a vacuum. A buzzword in business right now is innovation. The problem is if you have no systems in your organization, then just getting systems in is innovation. You know, I always hear people say, well, I came in here and this place is about 35 years old, and I'll tell you, they got an archaic way of doing things. Yeah, but here's the kicker. If it's in writing, they at least have a way of doing things. You can't innovate if all of that is absent. It's impossible. So I hear people get up and teach on innovation. So we go pay $3,000 to go to or $5,000 to go to an innovation conference. And we go to an innovation conference talking about innovation, and 3/4 of the people sitting out there don't even have the systems and processes to be innovated at all in their business. They need to provide those and see what works and what doesn't work before you can ever innovate. Thank you for all those enthusiastic amens. So it's amazing. We just think we're going to show up and drift to the top of the mountain. Let me tell you something. All good things are upstream. Peyton Manning, his retirement speech, got up and said, and I believe it's true, even if we're a Tom Brady fan in here, we got one, I know. Got 2, 3. I don't know the one on the front row. I don't know about the people from Boston, if they're Tom or Rhode Island or Massachusetts, like the guy here on the front row. But Peyton Manning got up and said, he said, I don't know if I was the most talented quarterback who ever played the game, but he said, I worked harder than anybody else. I'm telling you, you don't drift to the top of the mountain. And people get hurt in ministry, they get hurt in business, they get hurt trying to lead an organization, and you don't realize that when you get hurt, those are opportunities to learn and go back, make it noble failures, Dean Radke says. Learn to fall forward in the process of what you're doing. Don't sit down and sulk, say, okay, what do I need to do to get better? Because let me tell you, the difference between the word better and the difference between the word bitter is the letter I. You're the one in the center of it, so you've got to learn to get better, not bitter, and in the process you learn how to do what you need to do. So in leading our Charis Bible College Extension Schools, you have to wear both hats. So if we provide you the system, which we're doing, then what you must do is implement the system. If you're here and there's other things you're doing and you don't have a system, then you must provide the system. Then when it comes to leadership, which we're going to cover here in a little more detail, it's important that you understand you've got to learn how to love and lead people. Amen. So I want to read this to you. I'm going to make you turn a couple of pages back. But if you'll go to page 2, and I just want to re-emphasize this on page 2. And it's the second paragraph. Page 2, second paragraph. It starts with the word but. And I said, but what I did not know was how to do it. In other words, I was talking about when I started my career, if you want to call it that. I don't look at it as a career, I look at it as a calling. But just so you have a context for it, when I started my career, I started as a pastor. Now, many people in Karis don't know that, because what I do is the business teaching and the business school with Paul Milligan. Of course, Paul and I have been friends for years. But the reason that I'm bringing that up here in this teaching is because I graduated from a 4-year Assemblies of God Bible College, which is now called Southwestern Assemblies of God University in Waxahachie, Texas. I graduated with a degree, a 4-year Bachelor of Science degree in Christian ministry. And I want to tell you how much I knew about being a leader, or how much I knew about being a manager. You want to know how much I knew? Was 0. I knew nothing. Now, I could exegete a scripture pretty good, but I knew I was clueless. And so for the first year or two, I just bounced like a pool, like a pool ball on a pool table. I was ricocheting from one place to the other, trying to find my way around. And I learned some of this stuff because, listen, I wasn't interested in just what I was supposed to do. I was interested in how do I do it. Most of the time, a lot of ministers come out and they just know why they're doing it. I feel called, so I'm going to teach the word. But they don't even know what to do. I had some clue from school what to do, but nobody taught me how to do it. So in the second paragraph, it says here, it was because I could see and feel that the lack of systems and processes was what was missing that I began studying how to build systems in an organization. Most small business and nonprofit leaders focus on leadership to the exclusion of any teaching on management and how to build systems. They use phrases like, I'm not a micromanager, as though that is some valid excuse not to pay attention to the lack of systems or management in their organization or business. So here's what I want to say to you. You can't hire somebody to do this for you until you first learn something about how to do it. People, I see this happen all the time. Somebody says, well, yeah, look at Andrew and Paul Milligan. Exactly. Look at Andrew. How many employees did Andrew have when Paul came in? He had 300, and who did he hire before that? David Hardesty. He had grown the ministry up to a point where he could hire somebody. But if that's all you're thinking, and you're thinking, that's me, listen, Andrew is over here. And if I can be candid and let you know you got to love me to get to heaven, you are here. And because you are here, Toto, you ain't in Kansas no more. What I'm saying is this stuff is not going to happen automatically. I got Melba at least helping me. I can't get nobody else to help me. So a manager focuses on the work. A leader concentrates more on people, page 5, than he does on the work. He enables people to move into new areas of activity and achievement. So it's both of those things. So we say it this way. We combine them. We combine those two, and the leader and manager. So the leader is the heart and the manager is the head. Look, something like that. Leadership is art and management is science. Look, something like this. So in the science part, it's that manager develops those systems, and org charts, etc., to reflect the vision. The leader concentrates on the people. And so what we learn from this process is that balance is necessary. So balance is necessary. So if you're moving into a situation, and may I be really candid? The reason the World Outreach System is so important and what we're providing is because when you then go to some other seminar or go read some other leadership book, you'll now have a template in which, I call it a hat rack, in which to take what you learn and hang it on there. Most of the time, most people are still calling the trunk the elephant, and it's not the elephant. You need to see the whole elephant, which is what we want to show you in World Outreach. And then when you do learn and you do grow and you do get better and you do learn more about leadership or you do learn more about management, that in that process, in that process of doing so, then you have a place to put what it is you learn or you gather so you don't lose it, so you can implement it as it goes. So balance is necessary. Now, I actually, in the book, on page 6, I did this for Mike Pickett. Now, in case you don't know who Mike Pickett is, he's here on the front row. Now, Mark, who's your quarterback? You know, but you follow the Cowboys, right? No, Chicago. Denver, you find, oh, well, we don't have a quarterback either, so we're. That's a joke. But we really don't yet. We're working on it. So if you take, now I use Vince Lombardi in the book, but let me use Bill Belichick. When Belichick was invited to coach the Patriots, the thing that he said that he'd accept the offer under one condition. He wanted to be the leader and the manager. In other words, he wanted to be the coach and the general manager. He didn't want somebody else to manage. Now, some of that's been tweaked since then, but he said, I don't want somebody else managing football operations. I want to manage the football operations and I want to be coach. I want to do both. And so the reason I'm showing that to you in a football illustration, or you can read the one in the book there on the manual on Vince Lombardi, is that every good manager must, number one, select the right people, train them, and use their talents in the most efficient way to get the job done. So number one, it's on page 7, select the right people, train them, use their talents in the most effective way. So how many of you have ever heard of the book Good to Great by Jim Collins? How many of you? Let me see. So if you haven't heard it, after you hear this teaching, go and get that book. You're going to read a lot of things in that book that I don't have in here, but I'm making the point. He said it's important that you, first of all, have to get the right people on the bus. You've heard that before, right? That's Jim Collins, Good to Great. You have to get the right people on the bus. Then you have to get those people in the right seat on the bus. That's management. So if you learn that as you begin to go through this process, you train them, you use their talents. And I would say one of the greatest mistakes or gaps that people have in any organization is they do not provide enough time for training. Or onboarding. And the reason that that's necessary is so people know what seat to get on the bus. Then every good leader must bring out the best in each player and inspire each individual week after week. So leadership is more about building rapport, which we'll talk about at the end of the chapter. I got to hurry. About building rapport, and it's more about leading people and touching people. So an example will be a manager. Come on, Mike, stand up here and role play. Can you stand up fine? Yep. Man, you looking good, man. You lost a lot of weight since Russia. You know what we can't do this on video, can we? He's following me. So get over here in the light.
Hi, I'm in the light.
You're in the light. So a manager, let's say Billy's a manager. So I'm going to role play a manager. So I walk in, if I'm just a pure manager, have no leadership on me, A manager goes, Mike, how you doing?
Doing good.
You good? Did you get that work done I want you to do?
How you doing today?
And I walk off. A good leader with manager says, hey, Mike, how you doing today, man? Shakes their hand, touches them on the shoulder, looks them in the eye. How you doing? You having a good day? Having a good day.
Good day.
Right? How's your kids this weekend? And
doing great.
Doing great, blah, blah, blah. And then I may bring up.
That's right.
That's a combination of leader and manager. Everybody here? So you got to have both in the role play, and the systems are what allow you to be a manager, but it's the leadership that allows you to bond. Now you look good. I had to get you stand up here because those, you know what he did? He fed me a bunch of Bellinis in Russia. Now listen, if you don't know what Bellinis are, huh? Chocolate banana Bellini. And it's the same as they have in Paris that they call chocolate banana crepe. And I had like 18 of them. I had to get out of Russia, so I stopped eating Bellinis. So why are you a leader and a manager? Now notice there's no page number. It's because Jesus, the master teacher, said no one can serve two masters. So each organization must have one person who is ultimately responsible for motivating the team and coordinating their efforts. So if you look here at our organization, we have Andrew, who's the chairman, president, leader. Then we have Paul Milligan, who's the CEO. And Paul has to fill both leader and manager role. And if some of you don't know this, Andrew will fill certain leader and manager roles on certain things. And the point I'm making to you is, never in your life will you ever get away from either one to some extent. But sometimes you may be in a role where it's 70% leadership and 30% management. Other times you may get in a role where it's 70% management and 30% leadership. But there has to be an element that's there in both cases. So leadership without management on page 8, here's what happens. If there's leadership without management, morale may be high, but people will lose sight of the objective. People may be distracted by unnecessary tangents, and people may be working hard, but nothing really happens. Where you have leadership and without management, and so let me give you a nugget. Here's another nugget. Do not mistake activity for accomplishment. I see that happen in organizations all the time. People mistake activity for accomplishment, and the fact is what really matters is not how busy you are. What matters is what's getting accomplished or what's getting done. And so there's a secret to understanding that. Then the last one, we're going to take a break, is management without leadership will produce, the morale will be destroyed. If it's all management, in other words, heavy-handed, you got to do this, you got to do this, you got to do this, morale will be destroyed, and the organization's effort is wasted because people are not excited, they don't want to be there. And well-engineered programs are also wasted if there's not someone to lead it. The corporate world now calls that person the champion. We need either a change agent or a champion to lead the charge, especially when they're doing projects, but also just in any kind of generalization. So management without leadership is the second mistake or the overemphasis that people make. So we'll come back. When we come back, we'll still start at the end of chapter 1, where we're going to talk about the 2 ingredients that a strong leader possesses. So let's take a break. God bless you.